March 18th, 2026. Hello, I'm John Michael Chambers, jmcbroadcasting.com. And the gentleman you see next to me here on the screen needs no introduction. We're going to be talking with Derek Johnson, also known as Rattle Trap 1776, for perhaps the next 45 minutes to an hour on a topic that is becoming increasingly concerning, at least to me and to perhaps many others. Derek, I've seen as of recent, you've been dedicating some time on your platforms addressing what I'm going to call disruptors, people within our movement and at various levels, whether it's the podcaster world, the audience, if you want to call it, or folks above that in different uh, positions. And we're going to get into all this in just a moment. A lot of folks claim they're Trump and MAGA supporters, yet they waffle and get blown around in all kinds of directions like a leaf blowing in the wind when the president makes a move that they don't quite understand. You would think by now they would understand the Trump comms. They would understand the operation that you so aptly have defined by your photogenic mind, your brilliance in connecting the executive orders, the PEDs, the law of war manuals, being able to spot points in history and bring it to the surface for the events that are unfolding today that people are having a tough time with. Why they're still having a tough time with the work that you do and many others is beyond me. Be that as it may, that's the pool we're swimming in, and they're in the water with us. Derek, what are you taking on these days on your platforms concerning what I'm going to call podcasters, disruptors, and MAGA folks that seem to waffle like the wind?
Well, I think it's just a sign of the time. We know it's in an operation. For the military side, I always start out with, I don't believe you have to be a veteran to know what's going on. You don't. But there's a level of going, okay, laws and orders have been around. We know that. And people hear that so often that, yeah, before 2016, specifically November the 8th, 2016, uh, the date that changed world history, there was a line drawn in the sand. And that line is the difference in the blatant, uh, lies and manipulation of laws and orders from years past. And you can go as far back as you want to go, but specifically to the 1870s, when things really went off the rocker, and it just catapulted, or whatever the term you want to use, it just skyrocketed from there. And so, what I've been what I've been seeing is anyone who clearly wants to know what's going on, you're going to have to study and comprehend. Audio can only do so much, visual can only do so much until you actually have the substance of what President Trump's working with. In the military, it's a chain of command. It's a top down. All right, you have your generals, your admirals, and you work your way down, and every layer of every rank, every pay grade has their mission, their task. And then there's layers in the military of what our job is, what we call a MOS, a military occupational specialty. And so there's layers in the military alone already. But it's so clear for people like me, when people hear me, they need to realize that, look, you have to dive into my background. My grandfather was in the military during the most popular puppet government at the time in history in 43 and 45. So all the strategies that President Trump is using right now are straight out of the irregular and unconventional warfare pocket guides or manuals, publications that's already happened and taken place in the 40s. But every war is different. Every battle's different. Every mission's different. And so, it's so cool to see President Trump put a dash on his ball cap. I signed my publicity contract to write my books 43 days before he put that on his ball cap at Trump International with him present. All right. So timestamps don't lie, right? So people who do know me
Hmm.
a lot of these disruptors are people who already know me and know who I am, and not just me, knows you and Lieutenant Colonel Bosey and Colonel Sellers and all the people I'm on with. So it shows they don't listen. That shows they don't read, study, comprehend, because the whole point of where we are is to get out of the wallowing and elevate yourself. And everybody, even when everybody elevates themselves on the knowledge that's already readily available, it still doesn't mean anything in a matter of like, but it will make everybody empowered to know what's going on, but also that hey, all this past, we're leaving the past behind, the days of old, the faces and the names and the wallowing, and it's a same old drama that doesn't elevate people. And so even if 95% of America knew all the laws and orders as fluent as I did, well, great. Guess what? Not only can we prevent the swamp, but we also can be more effective and efficient on our operations of just regular local government, state government, and then federal. But President Trump just alluded to on March the 16th about how certain things, only a few things need to be federal, military being one of those, and then a couple other things. So, you know, all the fraud they're uncovering, all the things of that nature should have never been in federal. But in order for people to know this, they have to get into the mindset of our founders, not just read the Constitution, not just read the Declaration, not just read the Federalist Papers. You need to go read all their quotes that they left. They have letters on the Library of Congress. I mean, it's all available for everybody. All you got to do is go find old letters from presidents, letters to their wives, letters to their friends. Get in the mindset and read their philosophies and their ideologies and their personal beliefs, and then fast forward. And so, President Trump he's the face of the operation. And like I tell people, he's not the only piece of the operation. He's the face. He's the man who did say, yes, I will take the ridicule, the mockery, the hatred, all this. But he knew the beginning, he knows the middle, he knows the end. And that 45-47 visual is the direct middle of January the 20th, 2017 to January the 20th, 2029 of that visual. That's a direct center middle. And so what you're seeing right now is fatigue by a lot of people,
Hmm.
but especially quote unquote influencers. And what I'm trying to get the people out there to see is that look, even if even if it looked like the absolute worst storm of your life, your attitude reflects everything. Your attitude. And that's why I love the vision that they did in Forrest Gump with Lieutenant Dan when he had already lost his legs, he had already lost his mind considerably, portrayed in the movie.
Right.
When he's on the top of that ship and the winds are
Hmm.
howling and the ship is rocking and he's up there. You call this a storm? Oh, I'll show you. He was telling God,
That's
I'll
right.
show you a storm.
That's right.
Now, anyone who's a Christian, especially of any kind of sort of Christ and of God, would know, hey, you're yelling at God that I'll show you a storm, that the author and creator of the storm, I'll show. So it showed a man who had absolutely accepted death already. He was ready to die. He was willing to die, ready to die. So he had already reached every rock low bottom possible, but he was still fighting. He was still fighting because the spirit was fighting. He didn't really want to die himself. He didn't want to do it himself. So he's in another state. So it's an attitude thing. And there's all kinds of stories I could sit here and tell. But I like to tell one particular story that my mother loves that I tell. But Jack Denton, he ended up being a senator of Alabama, a congressman for years in Alabama. But Jack Denton was the man that they took prisoner in the Vietnam War. He's the one that they put on TV. All right. And you couldn't see behind the screen over here. You can't see my hand here. Can't see my hand here. Right. But they had the Navy, they had every branch of the military watching this screen when they put Jack on. He was a prisoner of war. And he was sitting there and they were asking him questions, the captors. And they asked him, are you, they let the U.S. ask, are you receiving water? And all. So he's sitting there, yes, we're receiving water, right? We're receiving aid, but he's blinking. And the Navy sitting there watching, we're watching him blink. This man, and this is really impressive for males because we're not typically your multitaskers, but he's sitting there blinking and talking at the same time, and he was blinking Torture, torture in Morse code. So think of the genius men. What if those men were not on their cue, on their duty that day? What if they had missed that? What if, now it was recorded. Sure, they could have caught it later, but it may have been too late. Those men were right on cue. They were watching every little detail. And he's blinking in Morse code while he's sitting there talking. So the enemy had no idea he's sitting there blinking Morse code to our men on the other side. And
Mm-hmm.
our men and our chain of command were able to act that quick and get in there and rescue them. And when he landed in the U.S., the only thing he did was get on the ground and he kissed the ground and he said, God bless America. He didn't make a spectacle out of himself. He didn't go make a big bio about himself. He wasn't military industrial complex. Hey, look at me. I'm a combat veteran of this and of that and of this. He just simply went back to his life, started living his life, and did what God put him in a position to do. And he was a good man and he lived a good life and passed. So it's an attitude. And
Mm-hmm.
so many people don't realize that attitude matters. And it's the same thing when you speak negativity or whatever you speak, you typically are the product of that. And so President Trump knew the beginning, the middle, and the end long before he rolled down the escalator. The escalator was already the visual of, I've already accepted this task in this mission. But then, whenever the visual was put out there, see, I already have my documents and all those things. And so in 2022, the timing is absolutely perfect of when God put me on the map for the full blueprint of the military portion. So the federal is just an entity, but military government, military occupation, whole of government, continuity government, government in exile, and then your puppet government. Those are strategies, those are tactics, and they're not going to be known to the average person unless the average person either had a grandfather or was in the military or a combination. And so it's one of those things where just because you never heard of it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And so we have fatigue because of internet. It's good when it's good, but when it's bad, it's ugly. Right. So it's one of those where there's too many names and faces. But Facebook and X, the little blue checks you can pay for now, and those are captured operations. They know who's who and who's saying what and who's doing what. That's why Facebook is limited now. Videos where you can do a video, but they delete it within a month. So there's a lot of changes coming. So people need to learn too about the First Amendment. The First Amendment was specifically for the fight of America. It wasn't for you to be able to say, oh, I hate so and so is a trafficker, and so is a this, and all these false accusations just to get views. That's where sedition comes in. That's where treason comes in, and all kinds of other things comes in. So there's a lot of people out there, they just want views so bad, and they claim they're a part of this movement, or they'll claim they're a part, they'll say I'm a we in the operation. I'm like, you're not. And so someone like me, it stinks in one way because it's like sometimes it sounds cocky and braggadocious, especially when you're solo on a platform like me when I'm doing a podcast on my own, not on a
Mm-hmm.
show, But I'm like, look, I've been a full name from day one, which means you can background check me because it's a real name. And then also, I do have my Rattle Trap 1776, but I've still always had Derek Johnson attached to it. But then I also am a retired veteran. So those two combinations automatically comes when you're retired. It comes with a Department of then Defense when I retire, but now war. But
Mm-hmm.
it comes with an identification number that you can, look up or whoever. Like, but if I got pulled over and for a ticket, they see that they can run that number and go, oh, he has a good standing, he's retiree, blah blah blah. But then, like, I got an opportunity extracurricular outside the military, but I've got two opportunities One, I can't really talk about a whole lot. I can just kind of show the show that, which our colonels are well of. But then also, I have a badge via the state of Oklahoma Broadcasting that goes through the Department of War, full credentials, and I can go anywhere with the press and the media, and also the military. And I have that badge. And so, like I tell people, I'm like, here's the thing. When you're trying to destroy someone's life with lies, they can destroy yours with the truth. And once the truth is out, then that one little grab you try to make on a podcast or a post or something like that, then it all of a sudden gets exposed, just like a particular person, conservative, won't say the name, but if someone out there claims to be MAGA, got millions of followers, and they said they're sick and tired of the word chess, and I've heard this chess thing and this chess, and said, F it, cussing, all kinds of things, calls President Trump by his first name, not a respectable thing. And then all of a sudden, President Trump's press conference on March the 16th, President Trump says it's high level chess. We're dealing with a chessboard here, high level chess. So, see, someone like that, if they had known what they're supposed to know, be your simplicities of government alone, then those might lead to you learning about the military, even if you never heard about the military strategies and tactics. But see, that's forever timestamped. And then someone like me gets the video, and I'm like, well, I got you. I've screen recorded it, and I can use you as an example. Is that okay? You got millions of followers, and here we are over here, our 100,000 followers on it. Of course, I think right around a million on all my platforms, but even just 100,000 on one platform, they could still be doing way more work than their millions over there, or because they're here, they're recipients of what this person is, and it's drama, right? And that's not how we sustain America, is by that. So it's all these disruptors from all different kinds of drama and all different kinds of past, wallowing in the past, when President Trump is the face of a military operation, military occupation, military government. And once people find out of those brackets, those disruptors, the ones that care, but maybe they're stumbled on the wrong way and don't know you and I exist, or Lieutenant Colonel and Colonel Sellers and all those, they don't know we exist. But once they find out that there's already a book in place, chronological order of the blueprint of the laws and the orders, once they find that out, then it's going to expose these disruptors as well, going, man, this book's been out in publication since 2023, and military law has been around before the Declaration. So once they find that out, they're showing that, hey, what if they were a good person? What if they meant well, but they went about it the wrong way? Then they forever burn a bridge, like President Trump says. Once you show you're not loyal to the humanitarian part of it, the bigger picture, then you were doing something here that you still should have never done, period, because it's still negative, right? And so if they were studying laws and orders of all walks of laws, local, state, federal, they may stumble on the other pieces. But anyway, it's just the disruptors that are trying to mislead people. And when you're a veteran, or you're like you, who have a heart, you have passion, it's not memorized, because you can tell when someone memorizes something just to memorize it, but you can tell the passion, the zeal, the zest when someone knows it like me. But someone like me and Lieutenant Colonel Bosey and Colonel Sellers and Colonel Lennox and Major Jim O'Connor and Brad and Jaco and all the other people we're on with. I hate to leave out names, but when you're a veteran, or you're still active in some other capacity, we're still under oath. And when you're a retired veteran, we still fall under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, which means I could be tried in a military court. All right. And that's a lot more strict than a federal. You don't want to go to a military court unless, you absolutely have a lot of things on your good side versus your bad. And so if people the regular people, would see that and feel that, there's a reason why we're here. We're not just talking weekly. We're not just dragging this out. When you read the laws and the orders that are currently invoked, and they're unique to a military government and a military occupation and a continuity government and the other entities, then it's game over for everything else. And that's the only way you and I are going to sustain America, but also the world, is getting rid of all this drama, negativity, propaganda, and the slander and the defamation and the false accusations and all those things. That's the only way we can save it, because that's the days of old that they're replicating,
Yes.
and you and I are replicating elevation of all people. No matter how much you comprehend of it, if you just get one little sliver of it out there, ladies and gentlemen, just one little piece, like if you love election interference more than anything else, but you get it and you comprehend it, then fight like hell in that arena.
Wow. Well, you've unpacked quite a bit. And before I follow up, I do want to put this on the record. Lieutenant Dan, you got legs, Lieutenant Dan. You brought me back to my Forrest Gump moment.
Titanium, baby.
All right, Derek.
That's a good one.
Thank you very much for sharing all of that with us. And I'd like to follow up with a couple of things. And to our audience, we are going to get to, as we conclude, this specific discussion that I wanted to have with Derek about the disruptors, which we're going to zero in on now. Before we close out, I'm going to have Derek weigh in on what's really going on in Iran, Venezuela, and Cuba. What is that operation really all about? Because there's a lot of confusion there. But before we get into that, let's break it down there. I've broken down three elements in listening to you in the last few minutes that I'd like you to address. We'll um, call them a lot of different things, disruptors. Uh, we'll leave it at that. So let's break it down. Elaborate specifically. There's three categories I want to walk you through. One is the public, the general public, what you call the target audience. The MAGA followers that I call the wafflers. They were against Trump when Trump said, "Oh, the Epstein files, that's a hoax. They're running on MAGA. What do you waste your time with that?" And of course, Elon Musk saying Trump's in the files. And of course, the weak, unfounded, ungrounded MAGA people and the like turn on Trump, right? Only to find out they're eating crow later on. And I believe some of those same people are doing the same thing right now with regards to Iran. So we're going to talk about that in a minute. But three categories I'd like you to focus in on. One is the public, two are the podcasters and influencers. I'd really like to spend some time. And then I'm going to have you comment, if you will, on Marjorie Taylor Greene, Tucker Carlson, Alex Jones, Candace Owens. But let's begin with the public, the general public that are in our camp. They voted for the president, Trump, but yet they're confused, disruptive, they're jumping ship anytime a move is made within the operation that is military precision, that I've learned so much about from you and from Colonel Bosey and Colonel Sellers and Colonel Lennox and Jaco and Brad and many other, Wano Savin, Brigadier General Blaine Holt, Matt Meck, all the folks I interview on my platform. I've learned a ton. I would hope and think that the dissenters or wafflers would learn a little bit faster as well. When we love them, this is tough love. We love you guys. You voted for the president. You're on our side of the fence. But if you're causing a problem, who are you really? What's going on? So break it down. Talk a little bit about, before we get into podcasters and influencers, talk about the public at large that are in this category, that are disruptors and jumping ship every time the wind doesn't blow in the direction that they understand. Speak to that, please.
I like making notes where I can uh, give you some bullet points there. But, well, first and foremost, before President Trump rolled down the escalator, this is a strategic plan. It's a pre-planned strategic plan. And then you get to strategy and tactics, right? If you and I were able to just go up to everybody that we're talking about and say, okay, what is your definition of a good government? Leave the military out for a moment, because
Mhm.
military don't apply to them unless it has to come in and act like we've done. Then you say, what is your definition of a good government? All right, we're at a population of 350 million. If you didn't have laws and orders, if you didn't have procedures and protocol and anything like that, it'd be chaos. It'd
Mhm.
be every man for himself, and then you'd have all the Barney Fives, and you'd have all the gangs, cartels. It would just be pandemonium and chaos. And then, I mean, it'd be decimation in the wrong kind of manner, because too many people out there who just don't like each other. You wouldn't even have to have a true gang versus another gang. You just have people who just, you know what, I don't like you and I don't like the way you talk to me. Boom. It would be chaos. So a good government, what is that? Well, that's what you go back to our foundation. And then the same entities out there in every conversation, you'll hear the same people that we're talking about. Somewhere, somehow along the way, they'll say something about the Constitution. They'll say the word democracy, or they'll say something about laws and this and why didn't president do this and that. And I'm like, you cannot question any form of leadership if you do not know a single word from a single sentence from a single paragraph of a single law. You just can't, right? You can't be constructive.
Mhm.
Criticism is great, like President Trump says, as long as it's constructive. Well, constructive, the root word construction would be to build something. Well, you're not gonna come to me and criticize me if you don't know a single anything of what I talk about. I'm just gonna laugh you off, flake you off, right?
Mhm.
Well, in reality, you and I are the government. But that is what the three words we the people mean. We're the government, they represent us. And like I tell people, our main motto in the Revolutionary War, the main motto, the main battle cry was taxation without representation. For a war, ladies and gentlemen, right? So they wanted to be taxed, but they were okay with being taxed, but they wanted representation. They wanted to directly speak to their representatives. Now we have representatives and we have a tax for a tax for a tax, but we have too many taxes because people don't know how to talk to the representatives, and those representatives know you don't know the language. Therefore, they put tax for a tax for a tax, and you don't know what's lawful or what's unconstitutional. You don't
Mhm.
know what is constitutional versus unconstitutional, right? And so getting that down to a, hey, simmer down, chill out. So President Trump, the generals, the admirals, the world generals, the world leaders, everybody that came in, the capitulation nations, etc., that said, hey, enough's enough. I want to be a part of this. Let's clean the world out. Let's
Mhm.
realign the alliances. Let's hammer NATO. Let's hammer the UN and etc. Right, European Union. I mean, everything's had been they've been hammered, but you have to get people involved still. So President Trump said the people don't. He basically said it. He didn't say it like this. I'm paraphrasing, but he's saying people don't know what's going on, so we got to give them what they want. Well, most people love drama. Unfortunately, they love drama TV. They love reality TV and TV shows, and they will not read a single word from a single sentence of a single paragraph. Look at the magazines that guys read. They don't read them. They look at the photos mainly. So, how do you get people to love education, to love knowledge, to love information that applies to, hey, we don't need a big government. We shouldn't need a big government, but we got to have a government. So, what makes that cool again versus all the yelling, screaming, cussing, fussing, griping, and all that? Because that's where everybody is. So, they already knew the people would be in that. They already knew that.
Mhm.
So and that's what's made this relatively easy because most people aren't willing to kill for their beliefs. That's an extreme, and those are rare. And it does happen, but it's kind of like an airplane crash. When it happens, the focus is on the crash, but how many aircraft are in that sky daily, right? No one looks at the data on that side; they look at the crash. So it's the same thing when some idiot goes through a crowd in their vehicle and they wipe out people. That's not something people do every day. So the focus goes to that versus how many people are maybe mad at each other or maybe they divorced over something or it's a relationship that don't get along because of the politics all of a sudden, but they still live together. They still manage as long as they don't talk about it or whatever that may be.
Right.
So most people are not willing to kill for their belief. So they knew that most of this they could get away with going, okay, we got to do this and do this and do this and do this and do this. It's all in our Special Operations Command publication, the Unconventional Warfare Pocket Guide with the pyramid in there. It's for revolutions, and it's majority of it is in the covert and clandestine section versus the overt and the visual. But it still means this: anything clandestine, once it's to you in the public, ladies and gentlemen, once it's made out there, once you can Google it, it's already for you. It's consumable. It's not secretive anymore. It could have been a clandestine, but someone like me and the colonels and the generals are the ones who can tell you, yeah, that would have been a clandestine covert operation that was made public. So, and that's what special operations is for. As Lieutenant Colonel Bosey will tell you that special ops, any kind, whether you're active, reserve, anything, or extra, contractual, whatever, any kind of special operations is always 3 to 6 days, weeks, months, years ahead, depending on what the topic is. And then this goes back to the old bait and switch. What President Trump's doing right now is a classic bait. You bait people up to engage them, get their attention, focus on this, and then whether it's negative or positive by the comments and the reactions, it still won't matter. The switch comes over here. If they were positive, then they're like, oh, I saw that here. Now I see it here. If it was negative, then it tries their what? Their integrity and their priorities. Epstein is a priority thing. All right. If you're demanding the files all of a sudden, but you never knew about it just a year ago, then you're doing the classic hindsight's 2020. You're demanding something you never knew about, but you were told about it. Now you're acting like you were privy to it all these years. There's no way for us to really know unless I knew you personally. Were you active on this and always yelling? But it's like the Israel thing. All of a sudden, all of these people are, why are we involved with Israel? Why are we still involved with Israel? Why is it? And I'm like, okay, provide me your screenshot information from before President Trump. Show me your screenshot data that shows you've been against Israel before President Trump. Nobody can produce that because they weren't, right? All of a sudden, they think because it's a war that President Trump is going against his word, or he's busting up the base and he's doing this. Ladies and gentlemen, every aspect of what President Trump's doing is from executive orders from the past. So, see, if you don't know basic laws, basic orders, basic fundamentals and operations of government, your 3 branches, how did it get in law? Why did it get in law? Who put it in law? Who legislated this? Who put this bill up for legislation? A lot of people don't even know how bills are presented. That's why Mr. Smith Goes to Washington is a great starter for people out there, because it's in a movie form. All right. It's not a boring form. It's in a movie with the legendary Jimmy Stewart. All right. It's a great movie to start out to see. And this was 1939. All right. And what's cool about it is tying that in is Jimmy Stewart, the legendary brigadier general, retired. All right. But 1939, the same year that John Wayne in the movie Stagecoach, they're riding in the stagecoach. John's on the floor, kind of laid back, and there's a businessman in there. Got his tie on, black suit, little top hat. And he said, what this nation needs is a businessman for president. In 1939, right? And that's John Wayne and then Jimmy Stewart the same year. And Jimmy Stewart exposing what's going on in D.C., how they put all these bills in a package together, and they'll just pass them all together. All right, well, you may get 3, and we may get 2, and you may get 2, and we may get 3, but we all get them in this. Ladies and gentlemen, that's what made this nation so dangerous. And a lot of that was judiciary. And what President Trump's also been calling out, the lawyers and the judges, not all lawyers, not all judges, but the judicial system. So see, it's the systems. People got to know the 3 branches of government. They don't need that. You've heard me on podcasts many times for 4 years now. Data shows where they get it from doesn't matter, but on average, 68 to 75%, somewhere in there, of 350 million people, you walk up to them on the street and say, name the 3 branches of government. They can't do it. But if you said, how do you feel about President Trump? If you just happen to stumble over a Democrat or liberal, they're gonna let you have it. Sure. Right? But I'm like, you can't even name the 3 branches. And I used to love, whether he's good or bad, I don't really know, but Jesse Waters, when he'd walk around on Waters World and he'd ask these questions on college campuses, he asked one time, it's a 50-50. And he told him that. He said, who won between Vietnam and the United States? And the person says, is this a trick question? He was like, no. It's a 50-50, actually. They didn't even hear that. Then they go proceed to say France. Out of a 50-50 United States and Vietnam, they say France. So see, that's the average mind out there. And it's sad in a lot of ways. It's humorous in a lot of ways, but it's sad. But so when someone like you and I, the colonels, generals, and all kinds of walks of life, of especially military, not just civilian, and I'm not knocking civilians alone, but especially military personnel sitting here showing you, hey, this is a military government, military occupation, continuity government. Here's the laws. Here they are invoked. You got to go read them. Here's how they go together. And then, it's like hybrid warfare. It's multiple variables. Then they look at you like a cow at a new gate. And you're like, but this is how it operates. This is how your government operates. This is how the military operates. This is how it functions. Then you show validities. You show little things like something as simple as, hey, well, they showed you to the world that Joe was a Democrat president, had a Democrat House, a Democrat Senate from 21 to 23, full Democrat. How come they couldn't pass a resolution for the War Powers Act then? The only portion of the War Powers Act that applies to President Trump is from 2019. So how come 21 to 23 they couldn't pass a resolution then? They didn't even bring up the resolution. They didn't even try. So see, that was all the way over here in 2026. So it shows people if they want to know. So they already knew that Americans' priorities are not where they're supposed to be. It's a massive learning curve for all those out there who never discover me, you, the colonels, the generals, et cetera, all of us together. It's going to be a massive learning curve. And there is going to be a revelation finale, yada, 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 whatever that may be. But getting there is the, obviously the key. But people out there listening, your role and responsibility is kind of like what the Bible says, especially if you're a Christian. I'm not a Bible thumper, but the Bible specifically says this, where it says, once you've heard one time, it's your responsibility, right? You've heard it. And so when you hear that, hey, there's laws invoked, there's orders invoked that are specific to the 45-47, it is your role and responsibility, no matter who you are, to go read and study those and say, what, even if you don't know the first initial law to get on, you go, hey, I got to find this cowboy, or I got to find this face I saw. I got to figure this out. If you don't have access to us, but most people do. So what you have to do is you do have to share these videos. And then you do also have to read the books. You have to read certain things. And just like me, if you can't afford a book, everything on my books are on my pages, but they're not in the chronological at this point because I'm following day-to-day operations and having to keep my people who are already tracking on the day-to-day. But you can go back and fast forward. But it's the straight up, it's a role and responsibility and duty of American as prescribed in the Declaration of Independence. And every American on the federal side, you're supposed to know what I know. So a lot of my validations aren't really validations. They're basic core fundamentals and operations of your principles of government. Now, the military portions are validations because that's the extracurricular part that put this on. But other than that, they knew people would be there. They knew people. We knew how to psychologically counter what's happened in the past. But you have to get people involved. And that's what they've been witnessing is just a counter psychological operation, but nothing that's, it's not flipping the narrative on another side to dominate and domineer the people on that. And that's where your love and respect of military has to come in and then seek to know, hey, this guy keeps talking about military strategies and tactics, and he's on with these colonels, and he's on with Navy SEAL, and he's on with so and so. And the military portion is the missing piece for most Americans that maybe do know the laws and orders. It's the key piece, and it's the key visual that President Trump's giving everybody.
Thank you. So if I could summarize what we're doing, folks, to bring us full circle to the question that I asked Derek, we're talking about the disruptors or those that are confused, and those disruptors in the public square that voted for Trump, but waffle and throw darts at people like Derek and others. The message, correct me if I'm wrong, Derek, from Derek Johnson to this segment of the population is get educated, know your laws and orders, know your military operation, and you've got more than a helping hand, folks, because you've got the great work Derek has laid out on his platforms, which we'll publish out when we conclude, and the shows that he does, his podcasts, and the shows that I interview and he's interviewed on with others. So the message from Derek to this segment is get educated before you shoot your mouth off because it's unbecoming and disruptive. Okay. Number two, if you wouldn't mind, Derek, addressing the same disruptors, because now we're going up the scale of influence, and that is a message from you to the podcasters and influencers of our times right now at this particular part and a critically important part of this war that we're engaged in this precise military operation. Talk to the podcasters and influencers that are disinformation, plants, uh, off the mark of truth, that are throwing darts at truthful narratives and people like you, me, and perhaps others. What's your message to these podcasters and influencers that are muddying up the waters of our war?
Well, it's a straight up mockery and disgrace to every memorial grave that you see in a national memorial cemetery. Straight off the bat, when I first, long before the good Lord and Department of War and all the other things that's been blessed to me has happened. I had a sergeant of mine told me, man, you got the gift. You got a gift of talking to people and bringing people together that are from different walks. And I've just always been able to go in the middle of two people who are even fighting and make them see a commonality. And that's the whole point of if you're claiming to be, especially if you're claiming to be an influencer, claiming to be a podcaster, then if you're sitting here using terms like peace and love and kindness and humanity and all these things, then you got to replicate that. You can't. That's a straight up sign of a hypocrite or a wolf in sheep's clothing. Is when you polar opposite do that. Preachers do this a lot. I mean, there's a lot of
Mhm.
preachers right now that also needs to be included in this. If you're
Yes.
speaking fear, you're speaking straight up against the word of God. All right, the living word of God. You're straight up speaking against it. And even if it's not Christianity, if it's Buddhism or anything of sign that's of peace and love and tranquility, you're straight up going against that. Right. And it's obvious. And anyone who reads the word and who reads and studies, ladies and gentlemen, you got to be able to recognize that and go, hey, that's not what the word says. If you're a Christian, that's not what the word says. A word that says nothing about fear. It talks about fear not all over the Bible. And so it goes back to the attitude of a warrior, attitude of a military veteran. You know, veterans, we have a shirt or a slogan, and it's this no, not the civilians, but it says specifically that it's for the civilians out there who act like some of these influencers, where they're acting like they're someone one minute, they're MAGA one minute, the next they're off, the one minute they're President Trump, the next they're off. Well, they're showing you their fruits. And the Bible tells you that. You can judge them by their fruits. You can tell them by their fruits. Oh, the whole book of Matthew is really great to read for this time period right now in history. But you know, uh, the Romans crucified Jesus. They witnessed every bit of his healings and miracles and still crucified him. All right, so that's showing you if a podcaster or influencer out there is straight up saying they're President Trump supporter, MAGA, humanity, whatever, and they're turning around and they're trashing someone or attacking someone, and it's all drama and it's nothing, there's false accusations. They're not of this operation. So it's getting into seeing what is the fruits. And so many people, I know people want to do well, but we have a slogan in the military. It says it's not that I can and you can't. It's I did and you didn't.
Mm.
All right. Now, that's for people out there with the negative attitudes or the oh, I don't need law enforcement and I don't need this. And that's for that attitude. That's not for the average civilian, all right, out there. But because a military veteran that's a retiree is under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, we're under an oath. But most veterans out there, they always say, my oath didn't expire, because it doesn't expire. And President Trump said, hey, veterans, remember your oath. He said this over and over, especially 2016, 2017. Remember your oath. You're going to serve again. And so everybody can be a servant, but you have to know what you're serving, right? You have to know. And when you're a true servant, you're not doing it for yourself. You're doing it for the other people. And
Hmm.
that's the camaraderie that military veterans, when you hear us veterans talk, that we're talking from from our heart, the passion, right? But we look at our veteran brothers and sisters more than we look at ourselves. And then if everybody makes that reciprocal, then they'll be looking at you and doing things for you. And when everybody does that, especially in the civilian world, when you replicate the brothership and the camaraderie that we have in the military, when you do that and everybody makes it reciprocal, and you don't think about yourself first, but you think about your neighbor first and everyone else, and then keep your attitude, like keep your, mind your own business. Like there's certain things you don't need to know about your neighbor. There's certain things you don't need to know and put your nose into and butt into unless they ask you, hey, how do you think of, what do you think about drinking? Or what do you think about this? Don't worry about it until they ask you. So see, it's kind of bringing all this stuff down that the world got into. The world got too much into everybody else's business and everybody else's stuff. And then that fed over into the podcast world to where, oh, well, this audience out here, they love what I'm talking about, but none of it has anything to do with the military operation whatsoever and a military government or anything, or even just a regular government. So if you're truly passionate about people, your attitude will reflect that. And then also your delivery will affect that, and it'll reflect it too. And so when you look at the people where they are, my whole thing is like, I absolutely know what's going on. I have the blueprint. And it's not about me having the blueprint, but because I don't have subscriptions, because the books are also all over my platforms daily. The books are more or less, to put it in the chronological, for people who want to study it like a workbook, which it is, and then also have it for keepsake. Other than that, when you have someone who has the full blueprint, militarily serving beyond service, doing some certain things with Department of War, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, then once again, like I said earlier, once someone finds out that there is a blueprint in place solid that outlines every single thing that you see and hear by President Trump and the military, all lawful, but mainly military law, then it's game over. And so if you're a podcaster out there, an influencer, and your heart means well, but you just don't have the material, then you shouldn't be the judge of what your audience can receive. I've had a podcaster who's blown up recently in the drama world, got millions of views now, told me, and I have this in text message, and I haven't unveiled this person, but again, I could, but I'm not an attacker. The person hasn't attacked me yet. Normally, I typically react when they attack me. But this person specifically said, people aren't as smart as you, Derek. People don't know what you know. And I'm like, it's not up to you to decide what buffet they have. If you know what I know, you give it to them and you give them everything you have and you let them decide. You don't hold people back. And so, see, veterans, we have this like maybe guilt or guilty conscience or conviction, whatever you want to call it, is when you are under an oath, when you are keeping that oath, when you are passionate about that oath and passionate about your service and passionate about the whole, like the bigger picture, and you do have that knowledge, it would be an injustice for me to keep people away from what I do know, right? Because what I know leads you to the bigger answers. I didn't write the laws, I didn't write the orders, I didn't write any of these things except for the intricacies of the strategies and tactics inlaid, as President Trump calls it, the weave. I wove all my intellectual property of how it all connects together. But other than that, all the laws, the orders, strategies, tactics, publications, manuals, directives, instructions, everything is from years past of military law. And so it's reading what you're supposed to know. And I'm glad I have it sitting right here. I have a great example of a book that people could, it's a simple read. Military Government and Martial Law by William Burkheimer. And here's a great example. This guy here was called what they call a Shermanite. He was under General Sherman, and he was up to that point a Shermanite. They called him that jokingly. Well, General Sherman and Colonel William Winthrop, full bird colonel, had a debate. And it was a healthy debate. It was just philosophy, high IQ, talking military laws, military government, and things of that nature. And by the end of it, the colonel actually schooled the general. Now, see, so what typical Americans will do, and some of it's natural and it's okay, but what typical Americans can do is they'll see a colonel versus a general and just think by rank the general is smarter than the colonel. And that's not always the case. It depends on their opportunities. Some colonels didn't get to pop up to the general level. But there's so many things that people hang on to that are not even necessarily true. What people should get into is the philosophies, the ideologies, the thinking, all kinds of thinking, but you need a foundation. Your foundation's got to be regular laws and orders of what's our foundation, the Constitution Declaration. But once you have a foundation, then you're thinking. And so all these publications and all these podcasters and influencers are not teaching a thing. They're keeping you wallowing in the same hole. And President Trump, if you're a President Trump supporter, the biggest thing the first thing that he made everybody laugh over was when he called all the news fake news. And it's true though, but for people out there, they were laughing and going, "Oh man, he's calling them fake news," and that's become a slogan now,
Yeah,
fake
it sure
news.
has.
Well, these influencers and podcasters, ladies and gentlemen, that keep you wallowing in the same old same, and they're not elevating your thinking, elevating your skill sets, or anything of that nature. You're in fake news still. It's a different face, different sound,
Great
different
point.
setting, but
Great point.
it's the same old same.
Great point. I'm going to, so, we're talking with Derek here about group number two. We covered the general public and the disruptors. Derek just addressed the podcasters and influencers. I'll comment by saying well, first off, there's imposters and infiltrators and grifters and stacks of idiots that have no clue what's going on. And there's that group. Then there's the group kind of that you've been speaking to. They have a responsibility, looking at my notes, to seek the truth and report the truth to help the people. I mean, that's kind of the bottom line, and we're not getting that to your latter points particularly. That and I think that was very well said at the very tail end there. That it's just another level of fake news. You've got these podcasters and influencers, and again, there's some very good ones out there. We're not going to name the good ones or the bad ones. You got to figure that out on your own, okay? But I'll tell you what. The, the ones we're addressing here that are the disruptors, um, you're right. It's another level of fake news. It's fear porn. It's National Enquirer version versus the New Yorker or something. I mean, and they're wallowing, as you just said a moment ago, on the drama of this. There's so many sound bites to grab in today's world. Just grab one from the Associated Press and the fake news world and pontificate it on it all day long and bury people in this movement rather than raise them up through intelligence, through facts, through information, and through the military and laws and orders and executive orders. So I think the message to these podcasters from Derek is pretty clear. That takes us to the next category. And I got other things I want to talk about as we finish off this aspect of our discussion, that to our audience, you don't want to go anywhere because Derek has an opportunity. While he does his lengthy podcasts on his own, as he said, he's got a collective million followers. He's met with the president many times. He's got press credentials. We're going to talk about Gitmo in a moment. We're going to talk about Israel. We're going to talk about the current operation with Iran, Venezuela, and Cuba. But before we do, let's wrap up the disruptors, and we'll talk about, and we'll be sensitive here, but let's get you on the record to the extent that you care to. Clearly, something's going on with Marjorie Taylor Greene. Something is clearly going on with Tucker Carlson. Something is clearly going on with Candace Owens, and you might as well throw Alex Jones in there from a recent clip I just happened to see. So, and you could add a whole lot of other names, but we're at that category now. We started with the general public, the target audience. We moved into the podcasters and influence. Now we're up to people with extraordinary influence and extraordinary audiences that have been with us and with the president for many years, that garnished the public's admiration and support, but now they're in question. Marjorie Taylor Greene, Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, AJ will speak to them as the headliners, and then those that would fall into that bracket. What's happening there in your crystal ball, in your best estimation? Because it is disruptive. Maybe it's disruptive by design as part of the plan. I don't know. Maybe it's disruptive because maybe they're not with us and the revelations are coming to light right now and they're being revealed. I don't know. I'm going to watch the show and see how it all plays out and see, as the president says, see what happens. We do know about central casting and so forth. So I threw all those darts at the board for you, Derek, to take on that level and these individuals to the extent that you care to. Let's address that, if you will, please.
Well, once people do, and most of our audience does know this, but maybe the new viewers out there, you're new to this, and welcome. But it's straight up the visual of 45-47 on President Trump's ball cap. We're not through 47 yet. And the thing about being you know, a civilian warrior, if you want to call it that, but a
Mhm.
patriot especially,
Mhm.
is that you got to seek to know what you can know about the blueprint, the strategy, the plan. There is a plan there. There is a strategy. It is that visual President Trump shows you. So there's daily bait and switches going on. There's two narratives though at the same time going on at the same time. Is the one what I call the target audience is the average American out there that don't know a single law, don't know a single anything, whether they're a President Trump supporter or not, doesn't matter what side they're on. They're seeing what media gives them. Media are captured, ladies and gentlemen. I can show you absolutely once you know the laws and orders of regular, but then military, what's been invoked. I can absolutely show you the continuity of government where it was invoked, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But media, they're under a wartime code. It's straight up a communications title 47. 1934 is actually how the act is. But they're under a code. So media are captured is the terminology. Also during a national emergency, any national emergency comes with 120 statute authorities, so statute powers. And so one of those is restricting telecommunications. You mentioned the Associated Press a while ago. It's a great example. They've been banned from a federal appeals court from entering Mar-a-Lago or the White House. Ladies and gentlemen, the only reason that the Associated Press, the AP Associated Press, would be banned from the White House and Mar-a-Lago is a wartime scenario just like that, because that is a straight validation and visual comm of, hey, that's a restricting telecommunications. That's a wartime code, 47 U.S. Code, section 606. So, it's knowing that straight out the gate. And then when you get to your players, Tucker, Marjorie, even Candace, it don't matter if whoever you are out there listening, if you had never heard of Candace Owens before the time you heard of her, it doesn't matter. But she was already launched out there, I think around 2015 or 2016. But she didn't become popular until President Trump recent years. So it doesn't matter though that you had never heard of her. It's the fact that someone already had, and she was looped in to play in a role. Now, if one of them were current and I had privy information to it, I probably wouldn't be able to tell anyway, because that's how operations work. However, strategy wise, tactics wise, when it's an influencer, someone like Candace, someone like Alex Jones, and those entities, even Tucker on news, when it's someone like that, Ladies and gentlemen, it's this simple, so don't overthink it. President Trump said way back in 2020, even though people want to take a topic and subject and think that that quote directly related to COVID only, it doesn't. But he specifically said the cure cannot be bigger than the problem. All right, so you can take that. That is a great analogy for any operation. Take that. Let's take the word cure out and let's put resolution or the answer or the solution cannot be bigger than the problem. So you don't have to overthink it. Alex Jones, Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, the three of those combined, what, 40 million, 50 million people in their direct audience. That's not their other the feed that you and I, we know data, like we have X amount of viewers on every podcast, but then there can be others out here that our reach, they call it a reach. And so I don't know what their direct number would be, but it's up there.
Hmm.
So they already have a target audience, ladies and gentlemen. So you use chess pieces that already have ears and eyes. All right. And then especially those who were already in the field of, oh, I like this and I like that and I like this and I support so and so. And so Alex Jones is a great one that I use. He's directly on a clip where his production guy, I've got a team the same way. They'll attach a microphone on me when I'm doing music videos because I may catch something natural. Sometimes when I know I'm being, recorded, especially in a setting where I'm with a truck or a tractor, sometimes you can try to overdo it and make it look too cool and you're just not natural and it don't look right. So they keep the feed on you where they can hear you at all times. And then also the cameras are always rolling and they normally catch things that you wouldn't have done naturally and they catch it. So same thing with me. My audio is always rolling. So whatever I say, they always have. So this guy had the audio and the footage of when it was quote unquote not recording of Alice. And he's over there messing with this thing on the side and he's like, I'm so sick of Trump and blah, blah, blah. All these things, right? Why would you say that? If you're a President Trump supporter, period, especially if you know the laws and orders of what's going on, there's no way you cannot love the face that that man put his face on. There's no way. There's just no way possible. So things like that, that shows true colors. It shows intent. It shows motives, money. Alex talked about how FBI was at his door and he was being, ladies and gentlemen, if anybody was going to be harassed or followed, especially during what people thought was Biden and Obama pulling the strings back here, it would be a guy like me sitting here telling you that here's all the military laws, all the military strategies, all the military tactics. Here's all the federal laws. Here's what it outlines. No, it's not this. No, it's not that. Here's this, that. I'm pretty sure if that deep state entity was still out there available, which it's not, but people that don't know that, they've been knocking on my door. They've been coming to me going, hey, you're getting all these views and you're saying that FBI ain't at my door because I'm not doing anything wrong. CIA, whoever, name it. So all these entities. Now, until President Trump makes it privy to you and or the bigger picture, however they spin it and all these things, like the Joe Kent situation, all of a sudden resigning over, Iran. Oh, it's just war in Iran. Well, Joe Kent, all of a sudden people just flocked on Joe Kent's name. Joe Kent. Most of them didn't even know who he was before this happened. So people do what? Flock to a name, flock to a name, flock to a name. But it still could be a bait switch. But see, people see Joe Kent. They see what? Green Beret. They see combat veteran and they go, oh, well, so what are they going to do? Derek Johnson, you say special operations. Well, this guy's special operations. And so, but we may not be to the switch yet. We're not to the switch because 47 is still going. Tucker Carlson, great example. Fox News. Fox News. I mean, most every Republican still watches Fox News. They won't turn over to OAN or Newsmax. And now I don't watch them myself. But if you're going to watch anything, turn off of Fox, right? And
Absolutely.
President Trump tells you this. President Trump, the man that most people claim to support, has told you the people who not to watch. He's
Mhm.
told you these things. He told you to join True Social. Most people still, his posts, I mean, he's got 2 or 3 million followers on Truth, maybe more than that now, but still, he doesn't have nearly what he should on Truth, his own platform,
Mhm.
versus X or Facebook, right? So many people, they'll say things, I don't want another app on my phone. It's the president's app. It is his app, and he posts more things on his app than he does everywhere else. And you're missing a lot of the key things by him that do add to your manna, as I call it, your good spirit, your good feeding. So he tells you not to, he says false, but he's really talking about the people up here that run false, right? He's hammering all these guys up here, but he tells you this. So Tucker, we know Fox had 33 million syndicated viewers, period, just syndicated alone for years. All right. So that it's you're already a captured audience, ladies and gentlemen. I mean that captured. So that most Fox News people, it don't matter who you are and what you tell them, they're not going to leave it. Right. So you got to give it to them right there. You got to bait them and switch them, bait them and switch them. So what President Trump's been doing, he talks about The Apprentice all the time. He just mentioned that on a post on March 16th, I believe it was, about The Apprentice, how he says, you're fired, right? When he's talking about all these people. And so what you're also witnessing is a resetting of what that has to look like in the future. Just because President Trump nominates someone, appoints someone, or hires someone doesn't mean they're good as gold. Right. And especially out of the operation, when we get out of it, we're back in a full constitutional government. You, the people, especially you, the people who end up in a position, maybe you're a local representative or a judge or a lawyer or whatever you are, you have to have these skill sets to identify what is this little, what is a money laundering or what are they doing? So many people don't even know our basic skill sets. And so Marjorie Taylor Greene, great example, where she's stock trader, insider information, but she's like $30 million worth of insider trade. All right, so she's in a sitting position. So when President Trump calls someone a traitor, it's going to have to be President Trump that has a chess move with her down the road for her to recover from being called a traitor. Being called a traitor in a military operation, that's
Not
not a good
good.
thing at all. That
Yep.
that is the worst you could be called of anything is a traitor. All right, because that means treason, sedition, and everything under it that applies. All right, Tucker Carlson. Now, it hasn't been fully. See, this is where a lot of the people, you're fatigued, and I get it from another level. But at the same time, that's where you have to trust military that we know this is a straight up big operation to drain the whole swamp and every entity to reset the whole playing field, but also reset the judicial system, meaning what's going to happen in the future. You are going to see justice. You're going to see it, but everything had to be cleaned out in its place, put here, all these new systems, et cetera, that they've had to clean out, the central bank being destructed. And I mean, there's so many things that had to take place. Then you have to do what? Those that require systems, actual legit systems, you got to find the people to build them, run them, and get those in place. Then the people over here, they're running all these other things. You got to find that first. Everybody that President Trump is nominating, they're all businessmen and women, highly successful, but also they're military. All right, that is a straight up playbook from President Eisenhower and five-star General Eisenhower's playbook, straight up of a continuity government and the Presidential Emergency Action Documents. That's a military government. Is former business people or highly successful and former veterans, whatever they are, and you put them in a position because they're successful. But they also have the skill sets to see what is and what ain't, who is and what isn't, and who isn't, and all these other things. And then also straight up, like our military law talks about. This is what Americans are guilty of, and you got to address it. Americans are guilty of the hindsight 2020 and judging everything because it's been made known to you. Who made it known to you? It wasn't you. It was what's been made available to you.
Mhm.
So in our military law, straight up all over the board, it talks about prevention. And it says, they use a quote from Hugo Grotius in 1625, where you can't judge a man on his past, but you need to judge him on his future to prevent him. Meaning, like, if you have the skill set to see, hey, you made this switch over here, this little transaction, like an accountant does. Accountant can find one little thing and go, this one little thing right here, though, is adding up over here, mega, right? And this is where we got them right here. So if you catch that one little thing, they never have a chance to grow and build like the swamp did. So see, that's a skill set, it's a mindset, and it's a future setting versus a past setting. And that's what military law is about. Now, we haven't had that in the past. No, but that's what President Trump, the line in the sand is, and that's what this whole operation is to clean that out, get the people in, get these systems running fluid, effective, and efficiently, and then we can go to a full constitutional and show you the people, and then you, the people, by the time we get there, they will have fed you what is, what isn't, who is, what isn't, and then when justice is ready, majority of people will be demanding justice the correct way, not in a non-priority way where they're yelling and kicking and cussing just because they want to see someone hang because they want to see someone hang. That's not good either. The other thing is they can't just give this over either, because if you gave it to the wrong people, then the wrong leaders will take power in their hands the wrong way as well and hang and shoot and kill people the wrong way as well. So this whole thing had to be that way. So Tucker Carlson, he's in the Biden laptop report. I mean, this is all you can, anybody can access this now. It's Marco Polo. It's 636 pages. I do not recommend children under 17, maybe 18, but especially 17. Do not let them see this. They do block things out. It is graphically blocked out, but they do allow adults to see the filth and corruption that these people were involved in. It ties in Romania, Serbia, Libya, Mexico, China, all the different entities. And then also Tucker Carlson's in here on page 512. He's directly tied to Hunter Biden, directly tied to him as a buddy, email and phone call. All right. So it's going to show people what wolves in sheep's clothing truly look like. All right. Now, he still will have to face, if that's him, legit, if they prosecute him over that, he'll have to face a jury or military court, depending on how they deem it, depending on what they do. Everybody still needs justice, right? But they also are by law required to be treated with dignity, respect, and go through the process. And everybody should be understanding of that. So a lot of people are demanding justice, but you also have to remember, if it were you there, you'd want everything to go by protocol and standard, not what the past has done. So that's just also a clean out of that as well. So all these different entities, they had to use them as a pawn because they already have a big, massive audience, way bigger than ours. And they have to use them. And because you couldn't stop history, it's once people do know it's a military operation, you couldn't stop and say, hey, Tucker's a good person, but by the way, in the future, he's going to be used for this. Can't do that. So every entity, if he was good, they can't stop do that. If he is bad, they can't stop and do that because it's an operation. And you'll see as you go. But if you're a patriot, Republican, conservative, you do need to be prepared for the people that you thought were good who aren't. All right. And then there's also going to be players that you thought were bad who aren't, because that's what special operations do. You got to get in, blend in, follow the money, track the money, see who's doing what and where it's going and who it's going to. And you may, President Trump just alluded to, he dropped a massive, massive comment in his press conference March 16th, where he said, former president, he said, I was talking to a former president who said, he said, and you'd be really, really shocked who it is. And he said that congratulated me and said he wished he'd have done what he's doing with Iran. Now that is massive because there's only a few presidents living, right? So, and then of course they asked him, and they asked him specifically, was it George Bush? And he said no. So then that leaves just a few. So
Yeah.
it's all coming to a head. And, so what I try to tell people is special operations, once you learn the laws and the orders and know that this is a military government, military occupation, then know that special operations requires players that look apart, whether it's good, they may be good, but playing a bad role, or they may be bad. And hey, you're going to have to learn that not all things that glitters is gold.
Yeah, great points in there, and you're right in reminding or alerting the public listening to us right now to put on their seatbelts to because there'll be discoveries, as you just mentioned. We thought these people were good; they turn out to be bad. We thought the bad people were bad; they turn out to be good. We're going to find out when the show is over and the operation concludes. In my opinion, the Marjorie Taylor Greens, the Tucker Carlsons, the Candace Owens, the Alex Joneses, and others of the like of where they sit. My advice to the American people and anyone listening around the world to this right now is if you want to stay grounded through all the confusions of the psychological operation that we are all recipients of, being deployed by us for our benefit and being deployed by the enemy for our detriment, whatever the case may be, ground yourself back to the executive orders, the presidential executive administrative documents, the PEDS, the law of war manual, the updates, and I'm a broken record with this, but I'm a big George Carlin fan. He was a bit left on certain issues, but that man was brilliant. And George Carlin said, hey, garbage in, garbage out. Folks, you've got to follow the pulse of truth and the facts that we are in a military operation. But I just want to conclude on this final segment of what we're discussing right now. The categories of the individuals you just commented on. Folks, you hear the expression, a lot of it's scripted, it's a show, central casting, central casting. Just rather than spending our time arguing about these individuals, let it play out and see what happens. Whether it's part of the operation, we'll find out. They're either, in my humble opinion, they're enemies and they'll be dealt with. They're part of the PSYOP. We'll breathe a sigh of relief later and go, good, I thought they were with us, good. They served, they took some heat for it, but they served well. Or they're just effing clueless. But we'll figure it out along the way. Let's move on, Derek, as we sort of wind down our special broadcast with you. And I appreciate your time and input here. Gitmo, I have a show I produce called Eyes on Gitmo with retired Brigadier General Blaine Holt. These are our staples. Retired Lieutenant Colonel Matt Meck, Marine, 20 years. Juan O'Savin's chief of staff, who's also served in Gitmo years back after the 9/11 issue over tribunals of sorts with some of those combatants, as well as had some stake in the development of what is now known as the Media Center at Gitmo, that I understand is a pretty large chunk of space, perhaps the size of a university gymnasium, I'm told. But on that program, Eyes on Gitmo, it's a monthly. Brigadier General Blaine Holt, Matt Meck, Juan O'Savin, the intelligence portion of the military panel, as well as revolving fourth seat. We've had Captain Pete Matasu and some others visit with us there. All great people giving us their perspectives from the roles that they're playing right now in this war. And what I've learned is we're getting ready to activate Media Center right straight from the horse's mouth at Gitmo, where the tribunals have been ongoing. The JAGs have been very busy, and that location and many other locations, as you've reported on, and others on our Global Defense War panel. But where I'm getting at, and this is a long setup for a question, you talk with us about your press credentials. Talk with us about what you might know about that media center, because folks, we spent some time discussing fake news within our movement, as Derek cited brilliantly before. Now you're going, straight to the horse's mouth, if you will. There's going to be I would assume, a very selective process of who's going to be admitted to that pool to be reporting, just the way they've done at the press corps now, weeding out, the idiots, as you stated, Associated Press, Bart from Mar-a-Lago. So, one would assume from common sense, we're going to have a really good pool of people there. And in my opinion, some of the reporting might be, and then there's the EBS, which I'd like to have you comment on in a minute, where we will be seeing from the Gitmo reporting and or the EBS live events that are unfolding Whether it's a portion of a tribunal or an interrogation or an investigation, I don't know. But a lot of the reporting will probably just be close because they're there, and then reporting on what just took place, behind closed doors that day. I think we'll get a mishmash, if you will, a hodgepodge mixture of all of that. These are my opinions. These are a big setup for some questions for you. So, a couple of questions. One, talk with us about your press credentials. Number one. Number two, give us your opinions or intel or insights that you can share about what you see about to unfold, reporting live from Gitmo, because that's going to change the landscape of things enormously. Just the way the podcaster movement and the Q decoders came out and changed the landscape of information for the people, good and bad. The same thing's going to happen, mostly good, I would presume, from Gitmo. I threw a lot of darts at the wall there, but pick up any way you'd like. Your press credentials here's a question on the minds of a lot of your followers and fans. They want to know, will Derek Johnson be there? You seem highly qualified. You've met with the president. Talk about those meetings with the president. Talk about your press credentials. Talk about your intel, insights, and opinions about what you see coming soon and when from Gitmo. Take it away, Derek.
Well, it's just a straight up regular press and media and military through state of Oklahoma broadcasting, and we're waiting to reveal who it is, just because we're going to make it real professional, which it is professional. But we decided to wait. So it's so funny. 3 years ago. It's been 3 years now. I was on a podcast and it leaked somehow. The host wasn't supposed to say it, but anyway, they accidentally leaked it and it went all over the podcast world that I was going to Guantanamo Bay, and I had put in for a May and June trial, and of course the official site still read that it was 9/11 captives. And anyway, so there was a dedicated hate group at that time who just absolutely hated me. And it was so much fun in another manner because publicity is still publicity.
Mhm.
But the part that got that, again, talking about people out there who will just listen and believe anything, but especially if it's negative and they don't understand press and publicity and who is credible and who isn't. It really truly sucked to watch like 10,000 people leave my page because they believe this particular podcaster out there who emailed the head guy of, I mean, he's one person, and it's not a secret who it is, so you can Google the guy. But they emailed this guy and said, "Oh yeah, so there's this Derek Johnson saying he's going to Guantanamo Bay and blah blah blah." And so the guy had denied me and all kinds of press and media. And in the email, specifically said that he said that he had only let 3 New York Times reporters go. Well, you know what President Trump says about the New York Times.
Yeah.
And so they didn't report that portion. So people just believed, oh, I talked to the guy. And he said, I mean, thousands of people left my page because of that one person and their animosity or jealousy, whatever it was. Or, oh, I'm trying to prove him wrong. And like we're trying to tell people, it's not about being right or wrong. Timing has a lot to do with it. Um, what I did was I'm hired on. We'll tell who that is soon. And then I got, press credentials, media credentials, military, meaning I can go anywhere. Now, what's cool is when you're retired military, even during the heaviest lockdowns, like during COVID, on military bases, or when there's a shooting, when you're a retiree, I can still get on bases. And then this press pass allows me to do it anyway. So either way, you'd have it.
Mhm.
But, a lot of veterans, especially, all the ones we're on with, they'll tell you we don't like press and media typically because the press and media that were in the fields with military, not your good press. There are some good press and media. There are. Yeah, he's got to be. But the ones that get out there and they try to make a story just to make a story, but
Mhm.
make it look like Hillary did that time where she said she was getting shot at. She wasn't no more getting shot at than anything. it was maybe gunfire somewhere, but they may have been celebrating the 4th of July or something. And she's like, oh, I'm getting shot at. Right. And so all these things that people try to do for publicity. So we went through this route. And so my interview was with what they call a lieutenant commander, which is, in the Navy, that's probably like a captain or something like that in the Army, or a lieutenant, but it's not. But still, you have to interview with a lieutenant commander, and he asks you questions like, what made you interested in this? Da, 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 da. I mean, just like an interview, like your job interview. And so I told him, well, and see, he didn't know he didn't know about my pages and book. He just straight up, a guy who's doing his duty, had no idea who I was at that time. And I said, well, I have a platform and a podcast, and I'm writing these books, and I literally had just left Trump International from signing my contract to write the books. This was like February the 19th or the 20th. I'm in Tallahassee, Florida, in a hotel doing this interview because I knew I wasn't going to make it to my next destination, and I knew I needed a setting and lights and, professional like this, and sitting here at least presentable somehow. And so I'm like, just like that. And I said that. I said, well, this, and this. And I said, but I'm a retired veteran. And I said, I just think that we need more of us, you and I, out on the field, reporting what is and what isn't, but also bringing that experience to bring people out there to know what really is and what really isn't. And he was like, he just like that. He was like, you are exactly what I have been telling my command that we need. And it was the passion of the military law, military orders, military regulations, military strategies, and tactics that no, most Americans don't know exist. And it's typically boring in another manner because it is in layers and different things. But he agreed. So next thing you know, I'm being denied. Well, so that stirred that up. But it wasn't just me. It was the timing of everything. And then this was 2023. And so I already knew what was going on anyway, because one, President Trump, when he was on the campaign trail in 2016, it was like February 2016, he was somewhere and Obama was somewhere. And Obama said that we're shutting down Guantanamo Bay. President
Mhm.
Trump, in a speech later that day, said, oh, by the way, I heard someone mention that we're shutting down Guantanamo Bay. No, we're not. We're keeping it open. As a matter of fact, he said, we're going to send tens of thousands there. Tens, plural, thousands, plural, ladies and gentlemen. That's a double plural. That's a lot of people. And so knowing those. So from February 2016, Obama and that administration would have had from February 2016 to January the 20th at 11:59 a.m. Eastern Standard Time to shut down Guantanamo Bay. They didn't do so.
Mhm.
Then you fast forward January the 30th, 2018, President Trump signs Executive Order 13823 to revoke Obama's portion of the shutdown portion. Now, an executive order alone does not shut down Guantanamo Bay, ladies and gentlemen, but because Obama put it in executive order, President Trump comes in and revokes that entity. Why didn't quote unquote Joe, why didn't he revoke Executive Order 13823? It's still active to this day, right? So that alone tells you right there that Joe wasn't real, and that's where I can show the new people it's a military government, government that's out puppet government. So then President Trump, who's this is also genius what he's done, is the same thing with the Jerusalem with the new embassy and et cetera. He said, I got it done for $500,000. No big deal. Right. It's like all these others out there quoting millions and millions. And President Trump's like, we got it done, 500 grand, easy. Right. So what's been taking place in Guantanamo Bay is expanded expansion, multiple layers of
Yes.
courtrooms,
Mhm.
fiber optics, the barracks that President Trump's already said 30,000, it can hold 30,000 in one location. That's just one location. He's just like teasing you with a little bit. And so it's expanding. And then I mean, like you said, I mean, Diego Garcia, Christmas Island, the Atoll Islands, the French Polynesian Islands. I mean, there's been heavy activity in Guam, all over these islands by military aircraft. So, and that could be us plus our allies out there on these islands. So there's a lot of things been taking place. And so, you know, what I just literally had a conversation with my sponsor that will unveil who it is and how I got my opportunity and all that on that side of things. Uh, is there's an appeals process and we're going to go through it. There's a new lieutenant commander, and this guy has he's helping my person. We're going to do an appeals process, and but it's common. It's common language on this side of things. But also, it wouldn't have been good timing, period. If people really are believing and understanding of what my role is in the bigger role, the timing wouldn't have been good anyway in another manner because of what is now known for the public to know. It would be perfect to go, in the future to be there. And that's what we've been talking about. And a matter of fact, I mean, I have two phones. Obviously, I have my funny Nintendo. That's my personal, and this is my Gitmo phone. So this is fully paid for, not by me. So I still have the phone not paid by me, but paid by my sponsor. So I'm still in the game, as the saying is. But what will they show to people? And all these other things. I mean, that's the other thing that they've actually been doing with people. They've been testing the waters out there with all these quote unquote shootings. I mean, if you'll look back to days of old, the shootings they showed, they never showed it to you. They never showed you anything to do with the shooting itself. Now they're showing you all the bullet holes and the blood and the gore and all this stuff. So, see, ladies and gentlemen, those of you who are patriots, you already know, but those of you that don't, you're recipient of being you're like a guinea pig. What they're seeing, what you're reacting to. Are you reacting to the emotion and the feeling and the drama? Or are you out there going, oh my gosh, they never showed this before. They didn't even show a body bag. Now they're showing the actual bullet holes and the wounds and everything else. Well, they're getting you ready for what? What President Trump's already alluded to with the quick trials. All right, trial in the morning, execution by the end of the day. And now I don't laugh at that lightly because, again, we should have never reached this point in
Yes.
humanity. That is the prevention level I'm talking about. And that's also the authority and the roles moving forward, that we also cannot get to dictatorship on that aspect as well. You can't get blood hungry, as the saying is out there. There has to be a level, again, of laws, orders, and protocol of those and the powers and authorities that come with that, the jurisdiction, if you will. But they are getting people ready for that justice. The last time we ever tried anybody in the U.S. for treason was in 1950s, where you actually saw a result of that. So it's been many, many, many years since people have seen the results of crimes against humanity, treason, sedition, trafficking, and things of that nature. But so they're trying to get people to where the people are demanding it more than it is.
Right.
We're versus us commanding it, you're demanding it. And when we can flip a good bit of people over in the normal target audience on both sides of the aisle, when we can flip them into a healthy demand, then they can show you this justice. And that's a key role in everybody. Now, it's going to come no matter what. It's not like they're dragging it out just because people aren't. There is a timeline, but it does help the more people who do know what's going on lawfully and strategically to know that. But I do believe, yes, I think that there will be a role somehow for me because I'm still in there. And then, special operations, there's another entity along with that on the external factor that I also am talking to and have some opportunities and whatnot. But I will tell a funny story. I mean, I was with President Trump one time. Maybe. It's just it's humorous, but I I was he was like, he'll do like that. He reminds me of my dad. My dad and him are so much alike when it comes to their personality. But he was like, come here, and so I walk over there, and I can't, no matter what. I just go straight to like a parade rest because I treat him like a commander, but the supreme commander. I can't do anything but what military does, so I put my hands behind my back. And he was asking me something. We were talking about something, but then I was like, we were talking about Florida and where what he was leading in the polls and stuff, just normal stuff. But then I was like, sir, with all due respect, can you please, can you please get me out of social media and get me back on the front line? And he reached out and he just I'm like, I'm not gonna not pound the president like that, but I'm like, sir, I'm being serious. All at the same time, I'm like doing that. I'm like, sir, I'm being serious. But he just giggled. He giggles just like I do. He'll chuckle or giggle, and he'll do the wink like that, kind of like you're doing a good job at what you're doing. So no, you're not leaving that yet, kind of deal. Now, how much would he have that on me? But he does watch my stuff. I mean, he and entities, Devin Nunes, Dan Scavino, different people. There's a photo of he and I talking, and he's got his phone up. He's on speakerphone. The person on the other line said, "Man, that guy knows what he's talking about, don't he?" Well, we were talking about executive orders one day, in like February the 14th, just this past February for Valentine's. So President Trump and I talk on the same wavelength and frequency because our gematria numbers in Hebrew and simple are the same numbers. Me, him, and Barron Trump. And so we talk uniquely and differently for people out there in our own kind of way, in our own kind of delivery and personality. But for example, I'm the only one who's ever mentioned, like I said, ladies and gentlemen, do you realize that where they're showing Del Rio, Texas, and these quote unquote illegals trying to get in is between this and El Paso? And they're telling you that 2,000 dirt poor Haitians, they didn't float to Florida, Key West, or anywhere in Florida. They went across the Gulf of America, walked about 700 miles across Mexico to Del Rio to finally decide, hey, this is where we want to go in the U.S. No. And so Haitians, Nicaraguans, and Cubans, and whoever else, the closest one, and I've always said this, the closest land and the people they're showing you in Del Rio, Texas is 1,536 miles away and they have to cross a major waterway. What did President Trump put up on a Valentine's Day card? He said that he was talking about the nations and he said 1,537 miles. Ladies and gentlemen, you can't get any more validated than something like that because that's not your average everyday topic that you talk about.
Mhm.
So me, you, there's a lot of people that I'll be able to introduce to my people and say, hey, they have way more credentials and experience in this field than I do in reporting and journalism. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities for people who have shown this goes back to the podcasters again and influencers out there that you're disruptors, but maybe you don't mean to be. So if you have a good heart and a good mind and a clear conscience and conviction level, you just don't know, you don't have the material, then hey, I'd probably delete that stuff again because it is timestamped. But
Mhm.
but hey, you can be an influence and you can go to these things. There will be opportunities there for people, but they're only going to let people, like you said, they're going to let people go who have proven themselves. But you got to be loyal to President Trump, loyal to MAGA, but more specifically, loyal to our humanitarian laws, our international laws, our laws that support our foundation, not laws just because they're laws, but laws that support the mission and the future.
Wow, thanks, Derek, and we wish you the best on the appeals. I want to wrap up our discussion, and it's been very informative from many angles. And I think this special broadcast is timely because of what's taking place again with people that don't understand the plan, don't understand the military operation, and continue to question and challenge our commander in chief in a time of war on an official wartime command structure that we're in. Uh, be brief, if you will. You have Iran, well, Venezuela to begin with, the in and out operation there that's paying off in spades right now with Maduro singing like a canary. So you've got Venezuela operation, you've got Iran in progress, but seemingly coming to an end of sorts soon. And then you've got Cuba, which has already begun without direct, overtly direct intervention from us. I'll state it that way. Um, you know more than I do, but Iran, Venezuela, and Cuba. What's the common, without getting into all the granular, what's the common battle plan? Obviously, this isn't, on a whim. Trump's pissed off, so we'll go bomb Iran tomorrow morning. All right. What is the operation and the common denominator that you can connect for the public here of what's taking place with Iran, Venezuela, and Cuba, and why is it so important?
The money. President Trump alluded he's done so many speeches now. It's so hard to go back and find all of them because he'll say things a lot the same, but a little bit differently in different speeches. But there's one particular speech he made not too long ago, and he was alluding to Iraq, and he specifically said, "Why didn't we take the money? Why didn't we take the oil?"
Well, yeah.
Now, that's where people have to be really skilled there. That's when you know your foundation. That's when you know the laws and orders of your federal and your military strategies, tactics, etc. Where, like President Trump has said with General Raising Cane, he said other generals said it would take years, and Raising Cane said, we could do it in 3 weeks. Ha! Well, that shows you that what he calls the TV generals versus the real generals. Well, then you get into your quote unquote diplomacy. And what did this entity do for all these years? And he just said it again in the press conference on March the 16th again specifically, where he said, this has been going on for 47 years, right? So he's alluding to quote unquote diplomacy. So the common denominator in all these
Mhm.
are what were they doing with the money? And this goes back to that skill set where it wasn't like that Obama or Bush or Clinton got away with 47 million they could have, but it wasn't like a one-time grab. They created these residuals,
Mhm.
right, that were invisible to the public. But these back end residuals over here in their quote unquote diplomacy. That's why they allude to Obama said, "Oh yeah, I'll be free in 3 days. We can talk." All these other things. So that's them showing you the tip of the iceberg. Somalia is another one in there. They all have the same common denominator. President Trump said in the State of the Union that Somalian fraud in the state of Minnesota alone will give the United States a balanced budget. That's a massive, massive calm there.
Hell
So
yeah.
Venezuela, there's your tie into your Smartmatic and your Dominion system voting. So all this ties into
Hmm.
their systematic process of their quote unquote diplomacy, which is the money, the fraud, the everything. So it ties to all that. And
Hmm.
then when he's referring to why didn't we take the oil and the money way back then? That is that other systematic of the military. And Colonel Lennox specifically opened up one night on one of our podcasts talking about how all of the military systems, not the hearts, the generals, the admirals, and the minds, but we're talking about the big game. All right, but our systems were specifically designed in the military not to be audited. Right. So that is by design. All right, which means, it got deleted. Oops. Oh well, can't find it. Right. So look at all the things that they did, the deep state. Now, we've always had good generals and good admirals who have fought the deep state along the way, and we've managed to keep it. Once people realize the military is separate, and we can show you things in history where we managed to keep things kind of balanced, but not flip over this way or flip over that way, but finally got a strategy and blueprint in place to take down this. That's President Trump alluding to Bush and then what they did with Iraq, what they did with the military. It wasn't for the American people. It was not for the United States of America. It was not for America first. This was part of that plan. And then, as we know, the 16-year plan that got interrupted. So Iran, Venezuela, Somalia, all these entities, Cuba, they all have the tie in. And of course, North Korea, some of those we've already dealt with already in the past period. But some of those didn't necessarily tie in with each other, maybe. But those are those are your key ones that did not capitulate. Is your Iran, your Venezuela, Somalia, and certain ones like that. So And that's the key visuals. And then they're all from the past, ladies and gentlemen. They're not anything President Trump. Every one of those are executive orders with national emergencies from Obama or Jimmy Carter, mainly Obama with outside of Iran. So it's straight up just opening a can of worms, but without doing it to the people from the standpoint of on the front. President Trump went on the offense and said, we're going to do this. We got to get this eradicated. We got to get this decimated, get it done, get it over with. It's going to be bumpy a little bit for the average person,
Sure.
the average MAGA, the average Republican, but here they already know this over here, and that's the 45-47. They already know that entity, and people just like you said, you just got look. You may not know everything right now, and you may not be able to fully comprehend everything I talk about, but just relax. That goes back to, do you trust President Trump? You yell, drain that swamp. We're draining that swamp, and just hey, at I don't like telling people just trust us, just to trust us. But because we are military, you can trust us a lot more than you can anybody else, even if you can't understand it. So you got to know that you yell, drain that swamp. The good guys have it in control. We all have it under control, and especially the top up here, it's already done. Just hang on a little bit and have faith in your commanders. And that's what the military is all about. Now we are to know our laws and regulations. And once you know that, then you'll have more faith and trust in your commanders that they wouldn't put you in a position to not be successful. And you, the civilian out there, has to realize that you're in that vulnerable position anyways. You're not in a position of knowing up here. So you got to trust somebody. You need to trust your military.
Excellent. Trust but verify, as the great Ronald Reagan once said. And so, again, garbage in, garbage out. Follow, whittle down your sources. Many takeaways for me from you in this discussion, Derek. One being, you got fake news in the podcaster levels. It's certain, at that level of podcasters in certain segments of it. So be careful who you follow. You certainly can't go wrong following military orders and the things that Derek Johnson is focused on. Follow that. Whittle your podcasters down to a couple of three, maybe 4 or 5 different sources for information. Stick with that. Trust but verify. Those of faith, ground yourself there, and do something every day. I used to say at the closing of my speeches years ago, at the Clay events and long before the Clay events, I did public speaking all across America many years ago, 2008, 9, 10, 11. I'm not a sunshine patriot, folks. I've been at this a long time, and I'm in my third decade and with a public record. I've got Library of Congress records of songs I've written about our freedoms that were taken away. Songs from the Light is something I published years ago. I've got published books. I've been interviewed. I've done interviewing. I've done speeches. And what I'm getting at is, back to the audience that's listening to us right now, garbage in, garbage out, follow the right sources, period. Trust but verify. Also, look in the mirror or when your children and grandchildren ask you, what were you doing when the global governance was being thrust down the collective throat of America and the world? What is your answer going to be? Freedom, it's up to us. You've got the pecking order, in my humble opinion: God, Trump, military, white hats, and we the people. So look in the mirror and ask yourself, are you a disruptor in this movement? But you're a good person, you're just getting banged all over the place by the psyops we're engaged in. Ground yourself. And I've put my 2 cents forward to help with that. I want to close this out with a final question to Derek. Also, to make mention, I know we'll get hit. Why didn't they talk about Israel? Hey, you know what? We've talked about Israel a lot. And let me say this: we're going to talk about Israel one more time as this operation with Iran, Venezuela, Cuba unfolding now. I said many years ago, Derek, on camera, I think in the formative stages of American media Periscope, when I was a host then, before I stepped down from being host and did other things there, I was on camera. I think James Grunwig was my co-host at the time, and we were looking at issues unfolding, 1871 Corp and different things, long before we got the muscle from Dr. Jan Halper Hayes to vindicate and validate us about 1871, and certainly you and many others since. But I was on the record at the time saying I believe we're going to see the fall of communism and dictatorship-run countries, these CIA Rothschild operations. I said we're going to see the fall of these in my lifetime. I said that maybe 5, 6 years ago, 6 years ago, something like that. And we're beginning to see that now. And I am thrilled to death to be alive during this period of time, to watch the transformation of from evil to good, take place from dark to light, as the Q operation would say. So, in my closing question, Derek, it's and before I forget, please, everyone, follow the Global Defense War monthly panel. It was a brainchild of both Derek and I when I met Derek, early last year, I think it was. So we're into our, second year here. And thank you, Derek, for helping put it together. That Global Defense War panel gets a lot of views because it gets a lot of truth out there from the panel and the people you've introduced me to. I thank you very much, Chuck Sellers, Colonel Lennox, and others. Brad, collectively, we're doing excellent work. And so, folks, join us. It's a monthly panel. We've never missed a month. And we will be back in a couple of weeks for our March Global Defense War panel, where we'll take on Israel, folks. So stand by for that. But my final question is this, Derek. July 4th is coming. Can't come soon enough, but it's coming. The president has told us we will be celebrating. Juan O'Savin said, in his language, block parties across America. There's clearly going to be, as I understand, leaders from other nations, dignitaries, and prime ministers and presidents, whatever the case may be, joining in our celebration. It's going to be more than just a bigger barbecue and a few more fireworks. This is the liberation of humanity, the beginning of it. This is the dawning of the golden age, in my humble opinion. And this is, I think and hope, there'll be surrounding that period of time, July 4th, maybe the 5th, and this period of time, great reveals, hopefully from the president and so forth and so on. My question to you is this. We're not going to solve and bring justice to the list I'm about to rattle off, all done and wrapped up and finished before July 4th. J6, 9/11, Benghazi, Fauci, and that whole mess of the pandemic. It's going to take some years to fully reveal, bring justice through military tribunals, the very few that may be done in civilian, and so forth and so on. The 6, 7, 8, 900,000, pick your number of indictments at patriot.gov. That's got to be worked through. This is a process. Some things will get done quickly. Some things will take, months. Some things will take years. Some things are going to take decades to put the world back on course the way God intended it to be. But having said that, the question is this: some things are front and center right now that the operation is brought to the table for us. Epstein list, Clinton's under, or whoever those people are, Clinton's under the depositions that were just taken. President Trump has talked about all roads lead to Obama. We've got Brennan and Clapper and the rest of that clan. My question is this: certain things, in my opinion, have to happen before a celebration of sorts in July 4th. Otherwise, the president will look like a hypocrite. So, and we know he's not. And so, what's your opinions, Derek, about what might take place through the terms of reveal, through the eyes of Gitmo, through however the operation's going to show us what has already happened? We'll see that. What's yet to happen, that we'll see in real time. What key things do you think might need to take place in order for us to truly be celebrating? And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this last thing, because you guys that know me, I'm not the fear guy. I'm the hope guy. Faith, hope, and love means something, okay? And so what I'm getting at here, Derek, is we've also got 1 million, by some measures, of Army reserves, National Guard. ICE military and others already in position on home turf in the event that these sleeper cells get activated to a significant level of concern. And so I'm throwing a lot of stuff out there, but you can take it all in to my final question. What do you see transpiring in the terms of reveals and justice, and in terms of potential dangers in the street that have to be wrapped up to some extent in order for us to be celebrating in July 4th? I don't know if you understood that question. It's long-winded. It's gotten a new definition here, but take that on, if you will. What do you, and it ties into EBS or EAS, Emergency Broadcast System, Emergency Alert System. There are some respectable people that say it's not going to happen at all, not needed. Okay, maybe. There are other respectable people that say it's a foregone conclusion. Where do you stand on all that? And if it is a foregone conclusion and you're in that camp, in my humble opinion, it's got to happen before July 4th. I threw a lot there for the final wrap up from Derek Johnson on these subjects that I know are on the minds of everyone listening right now. What say you, Derek?
Well, first and foremost, people need to know, what does America look like? What's it supposed to look like? America was never, United States of America were never supposed to be every 4 years, every 4 years, every 4 years, a president gets in and changes everything the last one did. As President Trump has alluded to, we we are to look the same simple concept of, if it ain't broke, don't try to fix it. If something's working, keep it going. Why did you touch it? That's why President Trump alluded to in the quote unquote debate with quote unquote Joe, where he said, um, why why did he touch inflation? Why did you touch it? Why did you move it? So that was all done in a puppet government. Once people learned that that was all strategic, but for the people that didn't know that, they had to see it that way. So what is America supposed to look like? We're not supposed to look the way we've looked with that economically, but also the way we judge each other, talk to each other, treat each other. We're not supposed to look that way. Multiple founders, plural, founders, plural, said there's two things that people should never lose friendship over: religion and politics. Look at where we are,
Yeah.
right? We can't even replicate our founders who gave their lives, gave these great ideologies, philosophies, thinking, etc. Right? So look at where we've dummied down in America. Look at our priorities: materialism, how big a house you have, how many cars you have, and this, that, and the other. Rich is all defined by the person. All right. And I know billionaires who wear cheap sunglasses and regular jeans, billionaires with a B, right? And you would never know they're a billionaire. Then you got the ones out there can barely make ends meet, but boy, they got to have a nice car and this, and they're rolling up to a trailer. God love them, but priorities. Look at what we've led to. So, what is America supposed to look? That's the first thing. Two, President Trump. If I didn't know what I know, and the generals and the colonels, etc., whoever you want to label there, if we didn't know what we know and doing what we're doing and tasked to do what we've been doing, both under oath, but also extracurricular, our opportunities, etc. If we didn't know that, then again, everything that we do see and have seen and have shown, it would all be for naught anyway, right? Then what does that lead you to? If this wasn't an operation and it didn't have an end goal, an end visual, it would be the same old bullcrap we've always had, right? It'd be the dog eat dog, the gnashing and yelling and kicking, and what we've had the last 100 years
Yeah.
of, really the last 50 years with media and press, really. So then what? Then what's that lead you back to? Someone still would have all right, enough's enough, I'm tired of it. But you don't need that. That is what President Trump, that's why he can say what he wants to say, act the way he wants to act, because it is a military operation. It's not a regular constitutional government. So all that leads to getting people to a place of, like we were talking about earlier, hey, when it's time to hand over, when we get to, when we, they, especially the higher ups, get every American to a place of, when they're ready for it, the appreciation will be there. See, all this needs an appreciation, a respect, a gratitude of not only America and the laws and orders, but people who put their life on the line for this from way back here when it started. So, all the things you rattled off there with 9/11 and all the different things that,
Mhm.
people also have to keep in mind. Most of these events have victims to it. So you got to respect the victims who were the direct people to that, what their wishes are, what they're ready for, the unveiling, etc. So those things take time. The initial thing is we the people right now living right now. What we going through, and these victims already know that as well. Like right now, this is priority because things that happened in the past, most of these victims have already lived through, right? And they had to live on their own through it because you didn't know about it, which is even more tumultuous and tormenting for these people, right? So you got to keep the humanitarian always at your heart. And if it were you, always think about if it were you first. If the shoe was on you, put it on yourself. Look in the mirror and say, "What if that was me? Would I want me treated that way? Or your mother, your father, your daughter, your son?" Always do that. Then you got to think about if you are a patriot. Look at President Trump. Look what he's a face of. Look what he put his name, face, brand. Not just him. He put his wife. He put his children. He put his grandchildren. His future. He did all this knowing that. All right. So that. Then look at his birthday. June 14th will be his 80th birthday. Now, every one of my family members who live to be in their 80s, but especially their 90s, they say the 80s are hell because that's when your body really starts taking that turn, right? Your mind and your body, the energy levels, etc., and then also reminiscing, and you can't do what you used to could do, and a lot of my family members have passed in their 80s, and a lot of people have. That's that common number out there. So President Trump to be exonerated. Now he already knows he's exonerated. The real President Trump back here behind the scene already knows that. But for him to live in that peace and harmony of what he has deserved for putting his name, face, and brand and image and family through visually to the public, it needs to be now, not 90s, 100s, or after he's gone. It would have to be now for it to be a full thing. Same thing that they've done with the Hall of Fame, and that's what President Trump has said. If you don't induct people in the Hall of Fame while they're living, it's not pointless because family left, but it is in another manner because that's the whole point of a Hall of Fame. If you're going to have a Hall of Fame, let the people see themselves being inducted into a Hall of Fame, right? And so that's also another, kind of calm to, hey, now he knows this, and this is already going to happen. So that brings us to where we are now. I have said this way back that military, we don't sit around and strategically and tactically think of how we can scare the heck out of Americans. That's not what military is for. It's not to scare you. You can get scared at things you see because you may not know, hey, this is an operation. We got it under control. It's not to be feared or scared or anything. But maybe you thought, man, you know what? Man, like Michael Jaco, someone who would go underwater for X amount of period of time, right? That's bravery, right? To trust your system, to trust your equipment, go underwater, go in a cave underwater, and whatever the mission is. That's bravery right out the gate, straight out the gate. But everything is strategic. So getting into where we are, I think that in order to get everybody on one heartbeat, that's why I love Paul Bear Bryant, who was a coach at Alabama, but he actually said this quote when he was at Texas A&M. When they went out, they called the Junction Boys. You can look at this movie, The Junction Boys, and they took him way out to Junction, Texas. And if you've ever been west of San Antonio by at least 100 miles, you're in some rough terrain, hot terrain, desolate, especially when it's in summer. He took them out there, hardly any water out there, even water buffaloes, and trained for college football. And he didn't have many left. Most of them quit. But he told them, the ones that stayed, He said, you have one heartbeat. All men on the same team, you have one heartbeat. And they flowed together. That's what a team is all about. You got 11 men on offense, 11 on defense. But when they're all on the same mind track, the same mindset, and they're all collectively coming together, that's what America's got to look like. Americans, you have to get back to that. You have to quit judging and judging here and judging others and worry about your own mirror, worry about your own family. You know, mind your own business, clean up your own backyard, those things. Know what's federal, know what's state, know what's local, know what's personal, know what's public, know those things. Then military, here, we've always been separate. Federal government, here. The military laws supersedes the Constitution when there needs to be enacting for that. This book right here tells you straight up on page 23, it tells you that the president can most certainly act independently of the Congress and declare war in certain situations. And you should want that because he's the commander of the Army and the Navy, not a bunch of suits and ties who've never been in the military, don't know anything about the military, and can get you in some stupid, precarious situations a lot quicker than a president will. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially a president who is the most transparent person in the world, right? And consistent. So, see, people got to learn those before you'll see that end goal. So, what I think they could do, this is just me, who knows? But you do have proof that President Trump, someone's watching me because the 1,537 miles versus 1,536, no one else even uses analogies out there like that. So, what they could do is, use the emergency alert system for good reasons. Because what it will do, ladies and gentlemen, I love using bars because most Christians ain't going to be sitting in a bar, but a lot of people go to bars and pubs and, taverns, etc. Well, if you're sitting in a bar, there's all kinds of people in a bar at any given time, Democrats, liberals, but most people in a bar are not talking politics because
I
when
don't
people
know.
get to drinking,
Yeah.
the liquid starts talking, right? And then these start going. And most people are really reverent in a bar more than they are in a church these days. If you want to pull some sacrilegion in here, I mean, I'm not trying to do it on purpose, but let's just be honest that most people are more reverent in the bar because they're out there trying to de-stress. I don't want to talk about it in here. And people end up having good conversations in a bar over sports or, anything, topics, or, oh man, my wife, passed away or something. You have people, all kinds of people having conversations in a bar. So what if you're sitting there and all of a sudden, bam, emergency alert, the real deal, right? Everybody's phones are flipped. All the TVs, especially in the sports bar, naturally you might have some Bubba who's watching the national championship with Alabama and Ohio State, right? And they're like, John, turn the TV back over. And he's like, I'm trying. And they're all stuck on the same channel, right? That would bring people to where the only way out of it at home or public is turn their laptop off, phone face forward, TV, try to turn it off, and walk outside. But guess what's going to happen? Even if you are capable of doing that for X amount of time, your friends and family won't because every TV, every phone, every computer will be on what they want you to see. Now, President Trump just alluded to this particular president that he said he's talking to, right? And they asked him specifically, was it George Bush? And he said no. So he's not a liar. So that already removes how many presidents are still living. Obama, you have Clinton, and then you have the puppet government, quote unquote, Joe, right? They specifically asked him again, was it Joe Biden? And he said, I'm not going to tell you, it's not necessary right now. But he said, you'll be shocked in another statement before it. Well, someone said, is it Bill Clinton? And then he said, what? He said, well, I'm not going to tell you right now. So see, he said no on George Bush, and the next question was at Bill Clinton, and he diverted. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that goes back to what you think you know. Do you know me? You never met me. If you've never met John here, you don't know us. You really don't know us. Now, John, me, but John's been in this a lot longer. Like he said, he's got a record, right? Resume, etc. Right? And so you have consistency. right? You have consistency with me the short time I've been in your life. You have consistency, you have transparency. So those things add up. You can look our names up, background search, you name it, whatever it says, you have privy to that. You have access to that. Right? You can tell if we've actually been in trouble or not. Do we have a criminal record or not? You can tell all that by background searches. Right? That's all information available. So it's the same thing with President Trump. It's the same thing with these people. Just because they're famous don't mean they're bad. Just because you think that oh, I wouldn't do that. Well, maybe you wouldn't do that. But what you think is a sin may not actually be. Right? So it goes back to living your world. So what I think what could happen, again, is that entity where you got Bill Clinton, maybe Obama, maybe, Hillary, maybe. It could be a lot of maybes there where they walk out all on the same stage, right? The ones that are wearing a mask, oh boy, you talking about shocking the world if they pull their
Yeah.
mask off
Oh,
and
yeah.
everybody's seeing this on the phone, a computer, and TV. That would be that's what the world has to see, in my opinion, because we're now in the age of AI generation. All
Hmm.
right. And people won't believe certain things. They won't believe it even if it's on Fox. They won't believe it even unless everything is all on one syndicated thing. And then you present whatever you need to present. And I've talked about, like a general type assembly where you see like all the generals in one room, and but you have all the faces that they love, and it's everybody that the Republicans love and the Democrats love, and they're like, wait, what's going on? And they can't get out of it. TV, phone, internet for X amount of days. They can't get out of it. And then it's also the President Trump. Give them what they want. They love drama. So guess what? You get to see a soap opera all in one show. I mean, it would be perfect. I don't know, but that's what the emergency alert is capable of. And they've shown people that, like the Charlie Kirk thing. I mean, people all over, I mean, nations, places that people didn't even think they even had TV or internet, or what they have data that shows hundreds and hundreds of millions of people watching all over the world, right? So they have people's attention. President Trump already did that in the first place because all the little countries where the little kids in Africa would be doing the Trump dance. So they, they already have attention all over the world. So you do it from that manner, and it's not doomsday. It's not, oh, the world's falling and it's a nuclear attack. You can't use, to me personally, you can't do that you can't scare people into knowledge, truth, facts, and information. You give them, like President Trump, you give them what they want, whether that, and then the few that wouldn't like it, they're going to be ostracized and alienated in another kind of manner. And then their friends and family are going to be influences on them, because even some of those would have been non-believers, but because everybody saw it at once, they'll be the voices to those that got ostracized or alienated as well. And then it kind of works itself out that way. And then you can have your block parties. And like President Trump said, all these athletes and all these sporting events. Look at Nick Saban, the coach of Alabama. When he was coach of Alabama, winning all his championships, people thought that when he went out and marched with BLM, his players with BLM, oh man, the Republicans of Alabama wanted him. Oh, you need to stick to coaching. Well, look what's happened. He's now working with President Trump on the executive orders
Hmm.
for the sports and the money that got involved with sports and all the things. So see, they use faces and names that people would have never thought. And then all of a sudden, like I've said, especially to the liberals who are typically more of your agitators and the ones on the left and the negative, but when all their heroes dissipate, they're not going to have any on the ground level, because this is all military government and all these entities are in it together, right? So there's no one down here that's going to rise up, because this up here is going to be so powerful. It's so revealing for humanity and all the corruption, that then the small portion who didn't, they're going to demand justice as well in another manner, because they're going to show you all these things. But it has to be the right way, right? It has to be where there's no, in the future, getting the hands on power the wrong way again, and then the Barney Fifes of the world taking law into their hands and killing people just because, or punishing people just because. It had to be done in a fruitful way that everybody can participate, but then everybody can appreciate, respect, and have gratitude, but then want to, hey, man, I love you, you're my neighbor, and la la, that kind of manner. Uh, but not hippie way in a wrong way, but just back to the basic principles of being a true American, living our life, doing what we're supposed to be doing, contributing to the future. And like my Native American ancestry, I am Native American. Uh, so it goes back to looking at your seventh generation. And if every generation will look at your seventh, then the next generation, their seventh, you can't lose that way. Your attitudes will be right. And that's what I think they're going to do to some capacity, to some extent. They've shown this. They've shown the generals in one room. They've shown the Charlie Kirk, the quote unquote memorial. They put the president, the vice president, the cabinet, all the people that would be a national security disaster in one building if something would have happened. They're showing you what's coming. Um, Theatrically, right? So that's what I
Well,
think has to happen and will happen. And it has to happen for President Trump his 80th and then July the 4th and then moving into that.
well, thank you. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. If when we're writing a script and following the show all through, it would be logical and would be common sense and would fit well into the script to have the EAS launched, in my humble opinion, before July. And to your point that you just made, you made a lot of points, but one of them being uh, that EBS used the way it's going to be used to reveal and show. And perhaps to help in hot spots in terms of direction for people. But that will bring unity big time. And that's what we need to crush the enemy. The divide and conquer thing will be gone when the truths are revealed, some in real time and others in other methods through the EBS. And again, if when we're writing a script to make a movie really, really good, it would fit real well for that to occur before July 4th, in my humble opinion. So let's see how it happens. Let's see what happens. Let's see how it all plays out. This has been a great discussion, Derek. I appreciate your time, your knowledge, your expertise, your ability. You do have, as you well know, a photogenic mind, a memory, whatever the word is, and your ability to pull up pieces of history and certainly executive orders and so forth is extremely valuable. And your sense of humor and ability to look at film to learn a little bit about where we are today, I think is a nice touch to things. Also, of course, you're a very talented, successful songwriter, for those that don't know. And for those that want, look, there's a lot of people new coming aboard. And for those that are new coming aboard, listening to this broadcast right now, tell everybody, Derek, where to follow you and your work so they don't get tripped up by all the Derek Johnson Rattle Trap imposters. What's the best way for everyone to click into your world and follow you?
My link tree, which is one link that'll drop down all of my social media sites that'll lead you to my blue check and red check pages, which I verify my sites on there. But link tree is linktr period ee backslash 1776 nation. That'll drop down all my links. But like my website's rattletrap1776.com and derekjohnsоncountry.com and the documents.info. So typically you can find my pictures on there and you can tell me, but there are a lot of fake accounts out there. My goodness, there are so many. And of course that's going to be part of the strategy moving forward is what President Trump's been signing, but thank goodness. But still, yeah, I don't contact you out there, nothing like that, especially financially, all this other stuff. I don't even talk about that. But Linktree is the best one. And you just got to make sure it's spelled correctly and the dots in the right spot. Linktree, linktr period, ee backslash 1776 nation. And there's, no underscores, no anything like that. It'll drop down all my accounts. And if it's not on that Linktree, it is not mine.
Thank you. And to provide additional direction to the audience here, if you visit my website, jmcbroadcasting.com, on the upper left-hand of the navigation bar, it says contributors, and you will see photograph, biography, and links into the people that contribute to my broadcasting. Of course, Derek Johnson is there, and Ricardo Bosi, and Juan O'Savin, and Mike Jaco, and Lennox, and Sellers, and many others. Right there, you can read a bit of Derek's bio. You'll see his photograph. I think it's a burgundy shirt with the cowboy hat standing up. And you'll see link that'll take you straight to where Derek just talked to you about. Also, I think it's my resource guide page, or perhaps on President Trump's page. I forget which page on my website. We have a lot of great resources. You'll also find 1776 documents of Derek Johnson's work up there to click to get into there. And lastly, I interviewed Derek last year in Conversations of Consequence. It's a specific format I do where I feature important voices of our time to learn about who they are from childhood all the way through their journey that brought them to where they are today, and have them weigh in on the events and make future statements. Derek Johnson, for those that want to, even if you think you know Derek, you'll learn a lot more about Derek if you watch Conversations of Consequence that Derek and I sat down last year and did, and all that's available on my website. So thank you all. Thank you, Derek Johnson, first and foremost, for this very engaging and widespread discussion that you and I have had. And I want to thank everyone for liking, following, and sharing our broadcasting, which is one of the reasons we're having exponential growth right now. Come join Derek and I, Global Defense War, among the other military panel members at the end of this month. I'm just going to sign us off and say, stay safe, everyone, and may God be with you.
Join JMC Broadcasting's monthly Global Defense War Military Panel. JMC hosts an esteemed panel of military experts, including Ricardo Bosi, Tom Lennox, Chuck Sellers, Michael Jaco, Derek Johnson, Brad Wozni, and other military guests. Join us each month, where this panel of esteemed guests analyze the current events across a broad spectrum of topics, addressing the questions and concerns that you have. Subscribe for free by visiting jmcbroadcasting.com. John looks forward to seeing you at the next episode of the Global Defense War Military Panel broadcast, right here on jmcbroadcasting.com.